I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a preface as to why we are here. What exactly is More Plus benefits for employees, and what is it that we're trying to achieve? And the best way to do that is to give you guys just a little understanding of the history of pension funds. So the first pension fund that was formalized was in the year 13 BC, when the Roman Emperor Augustus wanted to ensure that he could stop his soldiers from deserting, basically, and wanted to give them an incentive to stay in the army. And that incentive was basically, should you remain as a soldier, conscript in the army for 16 years for legions, you would be able to retire and you'd have a guaranteed pension for life. Fast forwarding a little bit further, the first formal pension scheme as we know it today, the first formalization was in 1889, whereby a bill was introduced in Germany, and that bill said for the first time, all the citizens, all the individuals within the country would contribute towards this pension scheme, and when they reached retirement, the scheme would provide them with a guaranteed income. When that was set up, the retirement age was originally 70, and later in 1916 it was lowered to 65. Effectively, these pensions were set up to say those in the working population will fund a scheme. They will pay contributions to the scheme with the aim that when they reach retirement, they will receive a guaranteed pension for life. And those schemes, and this scheme in particular, worked very, very well. Because in the year 1889, your average life expectancy of a German was just over 40 years old. So those who actually managed to get to 65 or 70 were the few. Today in Germany, the average age of a German citizen is just under 81 years old. If I had to describe defined benefit pension schemes, it basically was a model where you took the contributions of the many, put it into the fund, and paid for the income of the few. But thanks to science, living healthier, and the like, effectively, the working population has become a lot less than the retired population. And so those contributing towards the income were being outnumbered by those who were receiving the income. And therefore, we can see why these schemes are not as prevalent today as they used to be. Looking at the pension system in South Africa, the formalization of pensions in South Africa came into effect in 1956 when the Pension Funds Act came into being. Effectively, those targeted employer-based schemes. They were mostly large industry employers in South African context, the biggest providers being the mining houses, the large industrial houses. And again, they were these defined benefit plans, which effectively said to an employee, you arrive on day one, work for me for the next 36 years, and when you retire, you'll eventually get a pension for life. Fast forward through the 1980s and 1990s, smaller companies, what we call small to medium enterprises, these companies wanted to introduce benefits for employees. They wanted the tax benefits. They wanted to make sure that their employees were able to retire one day. But the defined benefit scheme was quite expensive because the company itself had to underwrite it. And so we saw the rise of these defined contribution schemes. And if we go into the early 90s and the mid-2000s, we saw that the biggest schemes who are now looking at the longevity of their pensioners and the companies who are underwriting them were saying, it's no longer going to be affordable for us to be able to continue to fund these pension schemes, and therefore we have to look at a way to move away from them. And that was twofold. Number one, how do we move from a defined benefit scheme to the defined contribution scheme for our existing employees? But number two, we've got all of these individuals who are retired that we're responsible for and therefore need to effectively earn an income which we have guaranteed. Effectively, companies were looking for specialists to come in and help them outsource their pensions. And that's really why our business was founded initially. We fast forward into the early 2000s and 2011 to 2029. And all of a sudden, you've got these people who have moved from the defined benefit schemes to these defined contribution schemes, meaning now they have a lump sum. When they retire, they need to take on the investment risk, they need to take on the longevity risk, and who's going to help them make this decision? They've never had to make financial decisions like this before. So that is the second opportunity and the second evolution of the Mor business, where we've spent the last 10 to 15 years helping these individuals make these vital decisions about what to do with their money after retirement. And so we fast forward now to the mid-2016s to 2021. Effectively, people need to make decisions, and so that is what brings us to today's discussion. People initially thought of their financial planning insofar as I've got my personal stuff, and then somewhere in the background is my company benefits. And now, the way people think about their money is I've got all of these things all over the show, and I need a holistic view. And most importantly, I need to make sure that they're all working holistically in my favor. Today, we have got what we call Mor Benefits for employees. An offering whereby we can offer you as the employers something that ticks all the boxes that you require in order to make sure you're an employer of choice, to make sure that you're looking after your employees, that when they retire, they have something to retire on, and more importantly, from a risk mitigation point of view, if something happens to them, you are covered. But how do we go and extend that to give the member the flexibility while reducing the burden on the employer to really make the benefits meaningful?